Let's jump into it. First and foremost, the discussion that I will lead here is going to be from the viewpoint of a wife married to a husband, and the husband has betrayed the marriage contract. Okay. A marriage contract could be written or unwritten. For most of us, marriage contracts are unwritten. We don't really vocalize, oh, this behavior, and this behavior is off limits. We just kind of assume because we maybe grew up in similar religious contexts or cultural contexts that like having an affair is outside of the marriage contract. We just kind of assume these things. And so a betrayal happens when what you believe your assumed upon marriage contract was is broken by the other party. So the conversation that we'll talk about today is specifically about a husband breaking that marriage contract, and then you as the wife is left basically with the rug pulled out from under her, and wondering which way is up and which way is down and what's even real anymore. And it's scary and life altering. And I see you and I hear you. But it doesn't have to stay like that forever. And your experience is very normal, even though it's not something that we readily talk about, especially in religious contexts. If you are, of a Christian faith, which I am pretty sure Ruth and Sherry both are, and that's where I've noticed a lot of our conversations have stemmed from. So I'm assuming a lot of our listeners here are also going to be from that same viewpoint. I would say that it's even less talked about in those social circles. So just want you to know that your experience is very normal, and you could probably throw a rock at church and hit another woman who's dealt with the same thing that you're dealing with right now. So I don't want you to feel alone, and I want you to feel like you have a place in this conversation. Now, the reason I explain all of that is because there are also forms of betrayal trauma that you could experience outside of that narrow perspective, and these tools will work for all of them. So you could experience trauma from your parents, betrayal trauma in this way. You could experience it in your workplace, and you could experience it in a boyfriend girlfriend relationship, doesn't have to be married. Um, and yeah, anyway, there are just so many, or an adult child. You have like a contract for the kind of behavior that your adult child is going to portray, and then you find out behavior that's outside of that contract, so you can experience the betrayal trauma there. So there's just a lot of places in which this will be applicable, and where you can feel the same kind of aftermath and that like shock to your nervous system that you experience. But for our conversation, we're going to talk about uh, sexual, and because this is maybe the most common, specifically probably pornography use by a husband that a wife then finds out about. But I've also coached women who husband tried to commit suicide, and I'm using the same steps to coach her that I would for somebody who's dealing with sexual encounter with another woman versus using porn. Like, all of it's kind of the same. It doesn't really matter what the behavior is, it shocks your system the same way. So your experience is no like worse, or you shouldn't be feeling so bad because, hey, it was only porn and I know these other women are dealing with all of this. Like, we're not going to play that game. We're not going to do that kind of judgment.